good morning and welcome to another edition of Meet the Saints. And I'm here this morning with Thomas Huddleston. Welcome, very nice to see you. Tell me a little bit about your involvement with All Saints Waterloo.
Sure. So I moved to Belgium in 2005, and it was really when I met my husband that we started to look for a church where we could feel welcome. I became involved in the Église du Musée in the city center, and I'd never really thought of All Saints Waterloo because I thought that it was a suburban church for expats. And I want to be more integrated in society with all different types of people. But then my husband's calling brought him into the Episcopal Church, and we started going. I accompanied him, and I actually found out that a lot of the people at All Saints are coming from Brussels or from various parts of Belgium because it is a very welcome and inclusive community. As the way that the Episcopal Church works, but also particularly as how All Saints work. And so it's been great for me to observe that. And I've also contributed because the Convocation of the Episcopal Church in Europe has created a task force on migrants and refugees. So more broadly, how the Episcopal Church as a church of immigrants can be more welcoming to all different types of newcomers here.
So inclusion in its broadest sense then of all different types of groups of people, including migrants and refugees.
Yeah, what I've really liked about the Episcopal Church is its emphasis on community building, that it wants to live the words of Christ with those who are part of the church community, meaning that you're very aware of all of the gifts and talents that every single person can bring to church, and you need to make that alive, which is why almost everybody who goes to All Saints has some role, no matter how big or how small, in worship, in the governance of the church, in the social activities of the church, and also it's believes in welcoming by making us ask why we would be excluding any particular person, or why would we have to be spending so much time asking ourselves why it's so difficult for us to do, certain types of actions or speak to certain types of people, when in fact we are called to go beyond that and to be with those people. So, I mean, I've enjoyed finding out the different ways that the Episcopal Church supports migrants and refugees and other vulnerable groups, but also brings them in as members of the church, as worship leaders, and how also they've been open to all the different types of ideas of services that my husband has been proposing on the Wondrous Wednesdays, like a service for World Refugee Day, or for Pride, or for commemoration, for listening, for obscure Belgian people of ecclesiastical note. I mean, it's a community where they really invite everyone to contribute.
So tell us a little bit about your personal faith, Thomas. Did you grow up in a religious family, or how did you come to faith yourself?
I grew up in a mixed family where my mother was raised in this activist Catholic church, with a lot of great nuns who were teachers and social workers who inspired her, but were less and less present in the church of today. And my father left a very evangelical, close-minded church of his childhood to become a psychologist. So my parents really focused on us being able to choose. And when I felt a calling towards faith in my teenage years from my mother, that obviously meant that I should return to the Catholic Church. And I didn't find neither that welcome that I needed as a gay teenager, nor did I really find a very relevant church for the issues that I cared about of diversity and equality and social justice. So it took a while for me to come back to the church, which I have done here, living abroad. And I think, unfortunately, many people who move abroad often move out of their faith and lose a bit of touch with their faith, because it's really uncomfortable to be in a church where you're not fluent in the language, or where you don't really understand the local community that might be a bit closed off. So I'm glad that I've been able to find those welcoming communities here in Brussels.
Any particular Bible passages or aspects of Christianity that are really close to your heart?
Well, my personal journey rediscovering my faith started with a rather secular reinterpretation of the Bible by Thomas Jefferson, who was an Episcopalian, a deist, who made his own version of the Bible, cutting and pasting only the bits that he thought were true, because they were based on facts and not all of the things that were said about Jesus to kind of sell Christianity. And that version was very striking because it really centered the words of Christ. And I was then so struck by the fact that most of the time Jesus asks questions of us rather than providing answers, and asks why we are asking certain questions and reframing to look at other things, and why he's also constantly asking us why we have to respond to the faith of those and the needs of those who are most involved in the church, who are most believing, who are the best Christians, instead of why aren't we paying attention to those who are most in need, those who are outside of the church, those who our societies are excluding. And I think that I always come to church for listening to the words of Christ, and the letters and these texts that are very hard to understand. But when you put them in the context of the period and then bring them into the context of today, I think we have a lot of questions that we can then carry with us in our work, or our social engagements, or in our family relationships.
Yes, it is remarkable, isn't it, how the Bible, although it's written in a specific time and context, does have something about it which means that we're still able to apply it in new ways to the situations in which we find ourselves today. And I think that a lot of that centers around the person of Jesus and his concern for the least and the lost, and we're always going to have the least and the lost in our midst, and we're constantly called, aren't we, to be challenged by that, and not to walk past it, but to engage with it. And you work with lobbying for migrant and refugee issues, don't you, in Brussels? That's a part of your professional life as well.
Mm-hmm. And I, when we were preparing the task force on migrants and refugees, we were looking for the Bible quotes about welcome, and we found, I think, already 75 with a quick search. And of course, it comes back to a radical message of love and hospitality and welcome. But what I find also useful about the Bible is it doesn't just tell you that you must be welcoming. It asks, who is the stranger to you and why? How can you welcome? How does it change you as a person? So it helps, I think, wrestle with a lot of the questions that nag at us as activists, or as researchers, or as volunteers. I think that kind of engaging with your faith tradition can help you realize how transformational the experiences can be that we go through. And then, yeah, on a practical level, I think that faith groups can be the kinds of agents of integration that many of our professional engagements or NGOs just can't do. I mean, creating groups of people that just simply care about a newcomer, that will just be a friend, and really welcome, that will really listen to their story, and particularly if they are a person of faith, let them know that they're not alone as a person of faith. I mean, these are things that when we professionalize our social engagements, we often neglect in serving and being with others.
Well, just one last question. It's been great to talk to you. What gives you hope when you look to the future right now?
Um, I think that a lot of us are shocked about the direction of our world and are seeking a new way to understand it and to connect the dots together. So I think that, you know, when I started out in this work 15 years ago, everyone had their little niche in social justice, in human rights, in religious engagement. And we spent a lot of our time just trying to actually convince each other that my language is most important and my perspective really matters. And the group that I work with is the most useful. And I think that all of us have realized that's not the problem here. The problem is many people who have been left behind, abandoned, not spoken to, who are confused and scared about the future. And we need to bring all of this together to be in a coalition of different faith groups, of secular groups, in order to fight for a more just world. So I've been excited to see how issues that I've worked with on migration and racism are now becoming a core part of the work of the Episcopal Church and other churches that actually want to be relevant for society, for issues of climate change, sustainability. I mean, it's now core to also what churches like All Saints are fighting for.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Thomas. And we're wishing you all the very best for your hopeful future too.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for,
so much,
thank
Jane.
you for